Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started so that we can have plenty of time for questions and answers after the presentation. My name is Elizabeth Vanderhoff, and I am the project manager and geologist for the Dow Chemical Facility. Other Eagle staff are here tonight, and I will introduce them at the end as we get ready to move into the question and answer portion of the meeting tonight. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to, the Dow Chemical Company recently submitted a renewal application for their existing hazardous waste operating license. Eagle has conducted an administrative review of the license to confirm that all of the required pieces have been submitted. So we are hosting this public meeting to present an overview of that renewal application and then allow you all time to ask Eagle questions about the application during the Q&A at the end. So overview of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Going to provide an overview of the state and federal laws that regulate hazardous waste treatment, storage, and disposal facilities here in Michigan, which Dow Chemical is one. I'll provide an overview of Dow's hazardous waste licensing history, and as well as an overview of the application review process that Eagle uses. And then the following slides will just be a high-level overview of the contents included in Dow's application. Those include common elements that you'll find in hazardous waste operating license applications, specifics for Dow's application, including the regulated or licensed units that they have at the facility, corrective action, and environmental monitoring programs. So because Dow is an existing hazardous waste facility, they have an existing license. I'll also provide a summary of their compliance with this current license, which is something that we do take into consideration when we do these application renewals. So why do we require hazardous waste storage, treatment, and disposal facilities to be licensed? In 1976, Congress passed the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, also known as RCRA. This expanded upon existing solid waste regulation to create a system for better managing the disposal of solid and hazardous waste from cradle or creation to grave, so ultimate disposal. In 1984, RCRA was amended with the passage of the Hazardous and Solid Waste Amendments. This encouraged the reduction or elimination of hazardous waste generation across the nation, phased out land disposal for certain types of hazardous waste, and expanded upon the authority of the United States Environmental Protection Agency to require corrective action or cleanup. So in 1986, the US EPA authorized the state of Michigan to implement its own hazardous waste program under RCRA. Thus, Part 111, Hazardous Waste Management, was enacted with the passage of Act 451 of 1994, the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act. So both federal and state law are designed to protect human and environmental health by again creating the system for the management of hazardous waste. This is done through permitting or licensing. The two terms are used interchangeably. Corrective action for legacy waste management units, and enforcement for non-compliance with licensing, cleanup, and environmental monitoring requirements. So while this presentation is focused on the hazardous waste operating license renewal, I did want to note that there are other state and federal laws that regulate air emissions, storm and water discharges that Dow is also required to comply with. So I will mention some of those during this presentation, but I will not be discussing those in detail. So before we get into the contents of the application, I just wanted to provide an overview of their hazardous waste licensing history. So in 1988, the US EPA authorized Dow an operating permit under RCRA. In 2003, Dow applied for and was granted a Part 111 hazardous waste operating license by the state of Michigan. Dow submitted a renewal application for that in 2013 and then requested that the license for their Michigan operations facility be combined with the Salzburg landfill license to kind of streamline the licensing process. So MDEQ, which is now Eagle, approved the combined license and issued that to Dow in 2015. So in Michigan, hazardous waste operating licenses are good for a period of up to 10 years. So as such, Dow is now required to apply for that license renewal. So just to give you kind of a visual about what Eagle's application review process looks like. Started last year when Dow notified Eagle of their intent to renew their Part 111 hazardous waste operating license. Eagle then provided Dow an application package outlining the documents and information that they are required to submit in that application and the March 28, 25 deadline by which we needed to receive that application. So Dow submitted that on March 27th, 2025, meeting the deadline that we required. Eagle then initiated our administrative review of the application just to confirm that all of the required components of that had been submitted. On April 28, 2025, Eagle issued a letter to Dow confirming that their application was found to be what we call administratively complete. Everything that needed to be there was there, and it moved it forward in the renewal process. So we are now here at the first of two public meetings. This one we call the public informational meeting to discuss the license application. We've also been working on the technical adequacy review of the license just to confirm that that adheres to state and federal law. So once the license is found to be technically adequate, Eagle will then draft a proposed license and open a public comment period. During that time, we will host a second public informational meeting to discuss the technical adequacy, which will again have another question and answer period. And then that will be followed by the public hearing, which allows the community to formally submit comments on that draft license. After Eagle receives the public comments, we have a chance to review and respond to those. We will make a final decision on that license, and if it is approved, the license will be issued to Dow. So, general description of the facility, you can't miss it. So, Dow's Michigan operations is located within the city of Midland and also portions of Midland Township. Most of their operations, including storage and treatment of hazardous waste, occurs on the east side of the Tittabawassee River. They do have the surface impoundment, which I will discuss later. Those are a treatment and storage unit, and those are located west of the river. The facility is owned and operated by Dow and occupied by Dow and other tenant companies. Dow first began operations here in 1897 when it was a 25-acre facility. Eventually, that grew to its current size of 1,900 acres, not including the Salzburg landfill. Their current historical operations continue to include chemical manufacturing and research development activities, which generate hazardous waste, and they also continue to treat, store, and dispose of that waste. Dow is not proposing any operational changes with this application in regard to how they are going to store or treat or dispose of waste, and they are not proposing to expand the Michigan operations facility beyond its current boundaries. The Salzburg Road landfill is the other facility that is included in this license. It is an active regulated waste management unit that accepts both hazardous and non-hazardous waste that is generated by Dow and its subsidiaries. Dow does not accept any waste from the public at this landfill. Primary waste consists of ash from the incinerator, which is used for thermal treatment of hazardous waste, but it might also contain non-hazardous construction or demolition debris from Dow's property. The landfill is approximately 152 acres in size and is located less than a mile southeast of the Michigan operations facility. It's comprised of multiple hazardous and non-hazardous waste cells, 28 of which are closed and capped. Dow currently operates 4 active hazardous waste cells that are denoted on the figure by the purple shading. They are currently licensed for 2 additional hazardous waste cells within the existing landfill boundary. They are seeking to have those renewed, although they do not plan to open those at this time, as the active waste cells are not at capacity. So now getting into different elements and components of the hazardous waste operating license application. There are some common elements that you will find in hazardous waste operating licenses, and I wanted to take a moment to kind of explain what those are because they are included in Dow's application. These elements promote safe handling and management of hazardous waste and include waste analysis to confirm that whatever waste is being received by Dow for treatment, storage, and disposal matches the profile that was provided to them by the entity that generated the waste. The facility has to know what they are receiving to confirm it's properly stored, treated, and disposed of. Periodic inspections of licensed waste management units, such as storage areas in buildings, tanks, containers, and secondary containment structures to prevent spills and accidental releases of hazardous waste are also required. The facility must implement a training program for facility personnel to help them understand their role in the hazardous waste management process and how they can safely carry out their job duties. Identifying and preparing for different types of emergency situations that could occur at the facility, such as fires, explosions, spills, and developing a response plan to address an incident should one occur. That's what we call emergency response and preparedness. Maintaining records for things like equipment, tank, container inspections, inspections of secondary containment structures, personnel training, waste manifests. Any issues that are identified during those inspections need to be reported to the regulatory authority and documented when appropriately addressed. The facility must also create a closure or post-closure plan to outline how active waste management units will be taken out of service and demonstrate financial assurance or confirm that there are funds in place to pay for any cleanup or long-term monitoring for waste management units requiring closure or post-closure care. Dow has all of these in their waste application, and Eagle is currently reviewing these for technical adequacy. So regulated or licensed units that are specific to Dow's Salzburg landfill in Michigan operations. These are any building, area, or equipment that is engineered for the purposes of hazardous waste management and regulated under Part 111. So this requires Dow to submit design plans, as-built drawings, specifications for equipment, and how each treatment, storage, or disposal unit will be operated and maintained. Dow currently operates 6 container and tank management areas, and those are found within like the blue outlined portion of that figure, just to kind of show you where those are. These include buildings, rail car offload spots for tanker trucks, and offloading spots for other types of containers. All of their buildings and offload spots currently have secondary containment structures, and the ground is intentionally sloped to direct runoff towards trenches and drains. Certain offload spots feed directly into the incinerator for thermal treatment. And then Dow uses different types of containers to store their hazardous waste on site, including packs or drums, tanker trucks, isotainers, rail cars, and roll-on or roll-off boxes. Capacity of these containers ranges in size from 55 gallons up to 7,000 gallons for their offload spots. Collectively, the storage areas are currently licensed to hold up to 833,685 gallons of hazardous waste. Dow is seeking to renew all of those storage areas for the same capacity. They are not intending to expand or enlarge those. Dow does maintain an above-ground tank system that's comprised of 5 tanks with a combined maximum capacity of 70,000 gallons. They are not proposing to increase the capacity of this tank system in the application either, and they would like this to be reauthorized. Like I mentioned earlier, Dow has submitted engineering drawings for their storage tank, their storage area, their tank systems, And this includes information on how the containers and tanks will be used and managed at the site to maintain their integrity, how secondary containment will be inspected and maintained, and how Dow will ensure compatibility of containers and tanks with the waste that is stored in them. The other regulated unit are the surface impoundments, which are designated by the purple outline on this figure. These are both storage, hazardous waste storage, and treatments. So Dow has an on-site wastewater treatment plant that processes material received from their on-site sewer systems. This is a 3-pond system that acts as both, like I said, hazardous waste storage and treatment, where treated wastewater or secondary effluent from their wastewater treatment plant is pumped into the first pond in the series and is gravity fed to the second and third ponds. This allows any solids to settle out of the treated wastewater to the bottom of the pond, where it is periodically dredged, dried, and then sent to the on-site incinerator for thermal treatment prior to disposal. Water is eventually discharged from the tertiary pond, so the largest pond in this system, to an outfall in the Tittabawassee River after undergoing some additional filtering to remove any remaining solids. So this is done under a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, which does not fall under Part 111 purview, but it is also regulated by EGLE, and EGLE does look at this permit and compliance when reviewing its hazardous waste operating license application. The total capacity of the surface impoundments is 800 million gallons. Dow is proposing to maintain that capacity at an operating level between 30 to 85% full, similar to what they are doing in their current license. Dow also conducts thermal treatment through incineration on site. That, if you can see it, I know this is a huge facility, but that green dot is the approximate location of their incineration complex. This process utilizes a rotary kiln to burn hazardous waste at a temperature that is high enough to destroy the contaminants up to 99.99%. Waste is fed directly from tanks and rail cars or from their wastewater treatment plant. The kiln has a capacity of 4,677 feet, is equipped with safety vents, automatic waste feed cutoffs, and continuous emissions monitoring. Calibration and maintenance of equipment is done, along with the air emissions, is done under 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 63, which is the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Waste Air Pollutants for source categories. EGLE's hazardous waste team does not have oversight of that, even though air emissions are included in this license, but we are working with our air quality staff, again, to check if there are any violations to that permit. Dow is not proposing any changes to their incinerator complex or the thermal treatment. We are, again, reviewing the technical adequacy of the incinerator and associated engineering plans with our air quality staff. And then after treatment, the remaining ash is then sent to Salzburg Road landfill, where it is disposed of in their licensed hazardous waste cells. So the active landfill on site I touched on earlier is Salzburg Road landfill. I also mentioned that Dow is not proposing to expand this facility or activate the other two cells that they were previously licensed for. So as I mentioned earlier, Dow has been operating at the Michigan Operations Facility since 1897, and this is well before RCRA and other state and federal laws were put into place. As such, historical waste disposal practices have resulted in the need for corrective action to address environmental contamination from historical waste management units. As such, corrective action is a requirement for Dow's renewal application. So a little background on what corrective action is. It's a program under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act that requires a facility to clean up mismanaged waste to address any environmental problems that it may have caused. It requires the facility to understand the source, nature, and extent of the contamination, or what it is, where it started, and where it's going, and then who or what will be impacted. So the facility must make every effort to mitigate or abate those threats to human health and environment, and eventually implement a plan to clean it up. So to date, Dow has identified 79 areas within the Michigan Operations Facility that require or are currently undergoing some form of corrective action. This includes 45 historical waste management areas that are being investigated or monitored under corrective action monitoring and maintenance plans, and 35 areas of concern that are being evaluated through the corrective action implementation plan, which was submitted as part of their license. Their license application. Some of you have probably heard about the off-site corrective action as well. So again, historical waste management practices led to environmental contamination of the Tittabawassee River. Dow has most notably been remediating sediments, the riverbank and floodplain soils along the Tittabawassee River, including the area of the river that is adjacent to the Dow's Michigan Operations Facility. Cleanup work has overall been completed to remove historical waste and impacted soils and sediments, although there is long-term monitoring. Dow has upgraded over the years their waste management processes through equipment upgrades and other administrative controls, and they've installed the revetment groundwater interceptor system known as the Regis system to also help prevent additional off-site contamination. So Dow is obligated to conduct corrective action per state and federal law. It is included in the licensing to ensure that they do comply with those provisions of corrective action. Hazardous waste licenses also require environmental monitoring programs. To date, Dow has implemented over 28 different programs to monitor air, soil, surface water, and groundwater at the facility. This is done to help detect any potential releases from hazardous waste units. Dow has resubmitted these environmental monitoring programs in their application. Some specific ones include the site-wide ambient air monitoring program, numerous surface water and groundwater monitoring programs, perimeter monitoring of soil boxes for fugitive dust, and monitoring of leachate collection systems at landfills. Dow is proposing to implement these programs again on the schedule that they have provided in the sampling and analysis plan of their application. We are, again, currently reviewing that for technical adequacy in that application. I mentioned this at the start of the presentation. Because Dow has an existing license, Eagle District staff do inspect the facility, the Michigan Operations Facility and Salzburg Road Landfill 4 times per year to verify that they are complying with the Part 111 hazardous waste license requirements. Items such as the condition of tanks and secondary containment structures, facility security, alarms, proper storage and labeling of waste and storage areas, and records such as training or waste manifests and contingency plans are reviewed. Eagle's central staff conduct annual operations and maintenance inspections for environmental monitoring programs and corrective action, as well as CAP inspections for closed units and landfills. Any issues with inspection requirements are then documented through formal communication. So if compliance issues are identified during any of those inspections, resolution typically occurs through formal correspondence with the facility. This involves follow-up communication from Eagle and the facility to confirm that the issue was corrected, follow-up inspections, or formal enforcement by means of violation notice, fast track order, or, if needed, consent order. The type of enforcement required is dependent on the severity of the issue and the facility's willingness to resolve the problem. As of October 10th, that was Eagle's last district inspection of the facility. And based on that inspection, the facility was determined to be in compliance. The US EPA also conducted an inspection of the incinerator complex back in September, and we are still awaiting the results of that inspection. But we do take compliance issues into consideration when we are conducting our review of the license application. We also consider violations for other applicable permits, such as the renewable operating permit for the incinerators, so that's for air emissions, and then also for the NPDES permit for the discharge of water, as I mentioned earlier. So just to provide a kind of a quick recap on the application renewal process and what's coming next, Dow submitted their application for the Michigan operations in Salzburg Road landfill facilities, 2 facilities and 1 license. Dow is not requesting to expand or enlarge their facility or treatment, storage, and disposal operations. Eagle is going to continue to review the license for technical adequacy and its adherence to state and federal law, after which we will draft a proposed license and open a public comment period. We will then host another public meeting, the technical adequacy meeting, which includes another question and answer period. And then we will follow that with the public hearing so that the general public can provide formal comments to Eagle on the proposed license. No question and answers will occur during the public hearing. But then once Eagle has reviewed and responded to those comments, we will then make a final decision on whether or not that license will be issued. Brings me to the close of my presentation, and we're getting ready for the Q&A portion. So I'd like to quickly introduce you to some of the Eagle staff here tonight that will be on our question and answer panel. We have Joe Rogers, a geologist for the Salzburg Road landfill, Todd Zinda, our district inspector, and then Elizabeth Cazalis, our permitting compliance analyst. And then there are other Eagle staff here tonight, and they may answer some questions as they come up. All right. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Well, I will start it out. Sure. My name's Terry Miller. I'm with Lone Tree Council.
Yeah.
And I'm also on the community advisory group for the dioxin cleanup in the Tittabawassee River, and I'm that for a long time. Also a veteran of the 8-year struggle with the state, then the DEQ, to hold Dow accountable for the dioxin contamination. So I have a number of questions. I certainly will pause if somebody else has questions, but in preparing for this and looking over the documentation, by the way, that's an excellent website. You've got a lot of material that the CAG will benefit from and have in one place, including all the corrective action. But I was wondering while I was looking at it, whether the NPDES permit, this was somehow part of that process. I know it's federal, and so I went to, of course, the computer on the wall, and turns out that the NPDES permit expired in September. Do you know anything about that? I'm sure you have a relationship with the EPA.
So that is, do you want to take that?
Yeah, the permit has been expired, but they're working on their expired permit, and they submitted a renewal application, a reissuance application, but it's still in the process. So yeah, it's been since 2015, but they were, since they submitted their reissuance application in a timely manner, they're still working on their own permit. So they're still under a permit.
Are you with the state?
Yeah, with Eagle.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, maybe you can answer some of these initial questions.
okay.
So, well, you kind of answered. There are still water discharges to the Tittabawassee River. Is there still a 1 mile mixing zone allowed.
1 mile mixing zone?
Mixing zone, yes, before any kind of sampling takes place.
Are you talking about, it depends on what type of sampling you're talking about. Because it discharges to the Tittabawassee River. And with all their sampling, it is required to permit is done just prior to discharge.
It's what?
It's done prior to discharge.
Okay,
So there's no
there's no
sampling.
mixing zone?
What's that?
There's no mixing zone allowed?
There's a mixing zone, but the sampling, I'm not sure about the sampling you're talking about in the mixing. It's not part of the permit.
Is the outfall still submerged?
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether, so the sampling occurs before it's discharged.
Well, there's sampling of their effluent, and that gets sampled right before it discharges to the river. And then there is a mixing zone, but that's not part of, it's not necessarily associated with the sampling requirement. It's probably associated with, I guess I'm not going to answer that. I'm not really sure exactly what kind of sampling you're doing.
Well, in the past anyway, the effluent was allowed to mix with the water, and sampling wasn't taken until a mile downstream. So the pollution was pollution. That was the thing that was very offensive at the time. And I wondered if that process was still continuing.
They may do some sampling downstream. It's not part of the permit, so I wouldn't know. I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
They just covered the permit.
I guess we'll just have to deal with that when the NPDS permit comes up and there's a presentation on that. Okay, so in the past there were 2 incinerators. They closed one down. Is that the one that was cracked?
I think the 2 historical incinerators you're referring to were closed down. They operate what's called the 32 incinerator,
Okay.
which I don't know exactly when that was installed, but that was more recent than those.
So I'm assuming, but I want to check, I would assume that the 32 incinerator incinerates, provides heat breakdown to the F compounds, including chlorinated compounds. And I was absolutely amazed that it listed 5 nines when both Michigan regs and U.S. EPA says the effective number should be 6 nines destruction. Why are they allowed to do 5 nines?
That I'm not sure. So the air emissions for the incinerator are handled by our air quality division. So I don't have a good answer for you on that, but I will follow up on that.
Well,
I could add a little more to that. So I think I can just talk. The Air Quality Division, they have their own permit, a renewable operating permit, and part of that permit requires them to test the emissions once every 5 years, and then they have continuous emission monitoring on the incinerator that monitors emissions continuously, and they have to check that the instruments are working annually through, it's called a RADA, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically a check to make sure their analytical instruments are reading the emissions properly. The destruction efficiency would be dictated through their permit to install with the Air Quality Division that then gets roped into their renewable operating permit. So typically the destruction efficiency would also be determined as part of the stack testing that they would do once every 5 years. But again, I'm kind of speaking off cuff. I used to work for Air Quality Division. I don't oversee that part of this facility, but we could put you in contact with the right air quality person to help answer your questions if you have more about the destruction efficiency or emissions monitoring.
Yeah, I'm just reading off what I pulled offline. In Michigan, state and federal regulations require a 99.9999 or 6/9 destruction and removal efficiency, DRE, for the incineration of certain hazardous waste contaminated with dioxins. So it actually surprises the hell out of me that it's still at 5/9. What?
Yeah, well, I'll have to follow up with our AQD people. I don't know. I mean, are you getting the 5/9 from their permit, or where are you getting that destruction efficiency from the application?
From the material that was sent out and
Okay.
online. It says 5/9, and you just presented 5/9 in the presentation.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll have to follow up with this. I mean, this is kind of out of our wheelhouse. This is under AQD's, Air
Okay.
Quality Division's oversight, so we'll have to follow up, and then we can get your contact information and try to give you a better response.
Good. Okay, and well, I'm willing to take a break if anybody's got any questions.
You guys said that you found their application to be in compliance. They're going through the paperwork and inspections on site, I'm assuming. Does compliance mean 0 findings?
Not necessarily. So we can find things that, like, we were just out there in October. One of the drums was missing an accumulation date. They have to write on there. We noted that as an issue, and it was corrected immediately. So, you know, small minor things we're not necessarily going to document as a violation if it can be quickly addressed and resolved. If it's recalcitrant, like say we keep going there and we keep finding the same issue over and over again, we're going to escalate that to a violation notice and then try to get compliance that way. And then if that doesn't work, then we go the enforcement route. So that being said, there are issues that come up, but typically we will try to resolve them if they're quick fixes, and if they're not, we'll formalize them through documentation.
Okay. So these minor findings or major findings, are they published?
Yeah, so they'll, you know, like I haven't finalized the letter for the inspection that was recently done, but there's 2 issues we called out in the letter and what they did for corrective action. And then our inspection reports would identify any issues too, and correspondence all goes into the file for, you know, our FOIA process. So, you know, when we write, you know, after the inspection, if we find issues, we'll email them, and, you know, we have correspondence back and forth. They provide photos, they provide documentation. That's all part of the file. Oh yeah, so we also use a system. It's an antiquated online system. It's called the Waste Data System. Is that right? Waste Data System. WIDS is the acronym. It's really kind of cumbersome to use, but that's how we log all our compliance inspections. If you go in there, you can look at all the compliance actions. It will tell you what there was a violation, but it might not be that easy to pinpoint what the violation was. Unfortunately, you'd either have to probably FOIA, or it might say in there, but sometimes it doesn't. But all the violations are put into a database, so that's publicly available. Like, when she was speaking, I pulled it up to take a quick look when the last compliance communication went out. It was 2023. So that's all recorded, and you could start digging that way if you're interested in the history of compliance.
Okay, I've got another one then. In attachment XIV.C3 under incineration or thermal treatment, it says, and I quote what's in there, Dow has not elected to comply with the alternative particulate standard of 4DC-FR. Could you explain that?
I cannot, no. I'd have to dig into that to figure out what they're talking about. That might be an emission standard that's set through the air quality regulations, but I'm not certain. So I'm pretty certain nobody else here is going to be able to answer that either.
Yeah, it's more of an air quality engineering purview.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if I can get, how does this license differ from the existing license in reducing discharges and air emissions? Or is this just a process where they meet the minimum standards required by RCRA?
This is a renewal of their license, so they're not asking for anything different.
And the state doesn't ask that they reduce their discharges or emissions
They
by
just
any
need
amount?
to meet the regulations that they're subject to. So the incinerator complex is subject to Clean Air Act regulations, and they have to comply with those emission limits that are set forth in those regulations, and like you brought forth the destruction efficiency. That's how it's regulated. It's not, we're not able to request a reduction in the emissions. That's all done through law.
They also do perimeter ambient air monitoring around they do perimeter air monitoring around the facility, ambient air monitoring, and around the landfill as well, that are more concerned with dust and those types of things. And they have action levels in the license that they have to adhere to that are based on human health.
So if you looked at their air permit, I wish I should have printed it off. I didn't expect there to be a lot of questions on it, but I should have. An air permit set up, they have emission limits for all the different constituents, VOCs or specific compounds. They're going to have that set up in their permit. And those emission limits, they demonstrate that either through stack testing, which they have to do as part of their air permit, or through continuous emission monitoring, which is a continuous analyzer that's constantly measuring what's going out the stack.
So that type of data, that monitoring data, it sounds like they've got groundwater, soil, the dust you talked about, and then air sampling they do as well. Sounds like some in the wood in the river as well. How often is that data posted? If it's some of it being monitored continuously?
For the monitoring data, that we review all that data. The license has requirements for, I think, Liz said there were 29 different monitoring programs in the license. So those are various different programs. They have different frequencies, different parameters, different goals and objectives. But we monitor those, and they would have required to report on those. Whether it's monthly or quarterly or annually. So we review those. I don't know if there's any public-facing thing that you could review. You probably have to do a FOIA or something like that to access some of that information.
In the air emission monitoring data, that would all go through the Air Quality Division. But again, I don't think they're submitting all the data to AQD. They just have to report exceedances, or they have quarterly, there's a reporting mechanism. I don't know if they give them all the data or how it works, but that'd be something you'd have to go through the Air Quality Division for.
Oh, just got a question.
Oh, no, I just wanted to point out, I believe the wastewater discharge data is monthly.
Okay.
Yeah.
The data associated with the MPDS permit is they have to report monthly all their results. So it's available via our My Environment. So you can get on there. I believe that data is public facing, so you can get on there and look at their monthly reports. Discharge, they call them DMRs, discharge monitoring reports. And air quality uses that same system now, My Environment. So we would probably
got one more. Under waste analysis plan, it's a revision. And it said, and I'm quoting, samples will be analyzed by the Dow Environmental Analysis Research Laboratory and Analytical Science Laboratories. In some cases, the services of an outside laboratory will be engaged. All analysis performed will follow SW846 methods or equivalent. And I was wondering, is this a new aspect to the license, or simply one of those things that just carry over from the previous?
Sorry, my voice doesn't project very well, so I'm going to use the microphone. This is a carryover from the previous license, so they'll be maintaining their current methods, or they'll be using the most recent published SW846 EPA methods.
And how often in the past did you require Dow to use an outside laboratory?
I'm not sure about that. They're not required to use an outside laboratory, or there aren't any requirements on when they need to use an outside laboratory. It's just that they need to be using scientifically backed methods for fingerprinting wastes that come in, or analyzing wastes that are coming in.
Do you know what kind of occasion would require the state to have them use an outside laboratory?
If they didn't have the capability themselves in-house to do a particular method, or to meet a particular detection limit or something, then in order to meet permit requirements, they may need to farm that out to an outside laboratory.
I would say too, for the NPDS permit, there's hundreds of different parameters and that they have to monitor for. And the majority of that gets sent out to other labs for analysis. But it doesn't matter if it goes up, the lab has to be, they have to check the QA/QC of that, the quality assurance program of that lab. They have to make sure that lab's using the proper methods, under SW846. So as long as they are using a lab that meets those requirements, they can use outside lab. But we can't tell them what lab they can or can't use.
Typically for like a waste analysis purpose, you got to remember they're a chemical company. Everything that is going for waste disposal there, they have the generator knowledge because they're producing, this is like typically an off-spec material, or somehow it's contaminated through their process where it becomes a waste. So they already have good generator knowledge and analytical on it from the production process of what the material is. So, I'll say from my standpoint of going to different facilities, Dow has a pretty dialed in waste profile. They call it the waste profile network, where all of their generators throughout the campus reports what the kind of waste it is, what it's being produced from, the constituents that go in there, what hazardous waste codes are applicable, and what disposal restrictions are appropriate for the waste. So, I don't think that they're probably doing that much additional analytical, especially with an outside lab, just because of how capable they are with their own facilities.
Also add that their generator waste, they have like a generator waste characterization form. It's one of the attachments to the waste analysis plan that you can find online. But they're required to submit a representative sample, and that form is much more extensive than a lot of the other facilities will have. It has all of the constituents, BTU, concentrations, percentage of materials, is it reactive, all that. It's a pretty comprehensive form when they accept that waste.
Well, my big issue is still the 6.9, so I want to talk to you more about that. It's not like Dow hasn't had a problem with that in the past. Some severe contamination in the Saginaw Bay as a result of incineration emissions that were dioxin intense, if you will. And so I'm just surprised it's allowed 5 nights. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Any other questions? All right. Guess that's it. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for your questions tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
I'm Bruce Powell. I'm from Indiana. I'm a wildlife biologist. And thanks for the presentation.
I'm wondering if it is related to this
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. To meet you.
I don't know what the deal was,
Look at
500s are like double the
construction efficiency
the past years.
is already dictated by the airport.
Yeah, we have some, so we guys will have this.
If they burn it in, maybe it's really good. Look at how much we used to generate.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, it's like
It's
we're
a
already
community
at like
action.
Yeah, you did
500, whatever, 500. That's what it's going
Yeah.
Kimberly had me second guessing myself all day today. And
Did
I
she
was
have
like,
you present to her?
I would like
Yeah.
I'm like,
okay. She did this morning, and then while she gave me edit, she didn't read my notes. I do edits at 4:30, like when I'm leaving. So it was up till 11:30, like revising everything. And then I was doing it all in this morning at 8 a.m. I presented it to her, walked her through it, and she was like,
I mean,
let's change this. So I was editing it till 1:15. I was like, I gotta go get a van. I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, well, I'm anyway. I'm going to Vegas for an
Basically, there's one way to
perfect time.
do that.
Yeah, I'll